In the time it takes to finish one stiff drink, me and my special guest, Howard Trotsky, are going to discuss the life and teachings of Trotsky. We're going to swap some stories about teaching, and we're going to find out if one stiff drink makes me better at remembering the periodic table. So, stay tuned for this episode of The Boondock Perspective,
where class is optional.
It's yet another carefree day in Maine, and you're listening to The Boondock Perspective, the show that not only loves new viewpoints, but fully embraces them. Here with me this week to chat, laugh, and imbibe is Howard Trotsky. You may know him from his time as a teacher in Jackman, his years as a Maine state senator, and his instrumental part in ending the log drives in the Kennebec. How are you doing today, Howard?
Doing okay, holding my own.
Do I call you Howard or Mr. Trotsky?
Every time I meet a student, it's always Mr. Trotsky. But everybody else they call by their first name. So the one interesting thing about teaching is that your kids, who even they're adults, they always call you Mr. all the time. It's different than any other profession.
When I called you to ask you to come on the show, that's what I called you. I said Mr. Trotsky.
Right, but you can call me Howard.
I think this is the first time I've ever referred to you as Howard.
I'd rather you do that.
You'd rather me call you Howard?
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Everybody call him
because
Howard.
When I went to school, everybody called me Mr. Trotsky. But when I went to my summer job guiding on the Kennebec, it was Howard. But when I went back to school, it was Mr. Trotsky. It was like
Howard the River Guide.
Yeah, that's right.
So people know who you are,
right?
I think, especially in the state of Maine, and you've touched a lot of lives.
Yeah.
I think you've touched more lives than you think you have. So what do you think are your greatest accomplishments through your life? Because you've affected a lot of things. Are you more proud of your work as a teacher, as an environmentalist, as a senator?
You can't, it's hard to prioritize things. I think where I was most important was actually not in the Senate, it was as a teacher. Because as a teacher, you affect individual lives. And it's a trust that you have because you're acting in loco parentis, in place of parents. And that's a very special job. And parents, the most important thing to parents is their children. And here you're in charge of their children. And you have to love the kids. If you don't, and it's not, you don't always love the kids. I mean, but they can give you a lot of trouble. But the thing is, you really do love them. Your success in life is not money. It's or building a tower or something like that. Your success in life, in retrospect, is looking back on the success of your students. When you see students who achieve happiness in life, who are contributing members of society, you have a great. It's a great honor to see that hopefully you have made some contribution to it. But a child's success depends on a lot of things. Not simple. It's the parents, it's teachers, it's what they're exposed to, and hopefully you did a little to help them make it in life and so on.
Yeah. Well, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Before we continue the conversation, and I don't think I explained this to you very well.
Yeah.
A big theme on the show is that this entire conversation takes place over the length of one alcoholic drink.
Yes.
Now, I will note that you have water.
Right.
So in this case, what I try and do, and this is like a fake scientific experiment, where I want to find out if one drink of alcohol makes me better at something peculiar. For example, a couple weeks ago, I had my dad try and juggle. So he juggled before he drank, and then he drank a beer, and then he tried to juggle after. And weirdly enough, he got better. Who knows if there's other factors contributing, like stress going down, being scared of it. But this study is about the effect of alcohol. It's not a real study.
Right.
So the question this week is how I am at knowing the periodic table, specifically the abbreviations. So I'm going to ask you to rattle off a couple of those elements. And then let's see if I can remember the abbreviation. And we'll do it over the course of 30 seconds.
Iron.
You go with the one I immediately didn't know. Doesn't start with an I, does it? IR?
No,
No way.
That's the first day in chemistry. You're giving these symbols.
That's not plumbum, right? That's lead.
That's lead, right?
That one screwed me a lot.
So iron is also a Latin.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh man, start with a K.
No.
What is that one?
It's ferrous metals. It means having Fe. It comes from ferrum. Yeah, Fe is iron.
I'm not off to a good start.
No, I'm giving you the ones that you would forget.
You gave me the one that I definitely failed.
The reason I have to admit this, but if you haven't taught chemistry for 15 years, I forget a lot of this too. I mean, if you're not using something, you lose it, and so on. So. That's what happens, but I'm really disappointed in you and with iron, because that, I mean, every kid knows.
Yeah, all of them know iron.
Okay. Copper.
Is that CO?
No.
Are you giving me another hard one?
They're not hard. The kids memorize. These are the first things the kids memorize.
Copper. It's not CO?
I really screwed up as a teacher with you. I can see. You had me as
I remember plumbum. That's what I know. I remember lead.
Yeah, a plumb line. A mason uses a plumb line.
Pipe is plumb. Oh, okay.
It's a pointed heavy brass thing with a string, and it points to the center of the earth, gravity. Huh. So if you're building a chimney, you got to have the plumb line so you don't go. So everything, if the force is down and outside.
I have learned something.
Yeah.
Copper. What's copper? What one was it?
Cuprum. It comes from the word cuprum.
Copper's with a Q?
No, cuprum.
Cuprum. Is it Q? It's CU?
CU, right.
Ah.
CU. I need my glasses.
Yeah, give me one more, and then I probably won't get this one.
A gold.
I remember this one's hard as well.
This is the first quiz in chemistry.
Yeah, you really helped me out through chemistry. I shouldn't have passed your class.
Well, it has an aura to it, right?
Yeah.
Gold.
Yeah. Is it AU?
AU, aura.
Yeah. I did okay.
Mercury.
Everybody else, if anybody who's listening to this knows any of these, then
they all know them. You're the only one who doesn't know them.
Oh, Mercury.
Did I pass you?
Oh yeah, with like a C-. I
don't remember that.
You know what I remember most is the word stoichiometry.
That was.
You must have said that 1,000 times.
I know, it's a great word.
Couldn't do it, but I know the word.
Yeah. It was problem solving. Stoichiometry was problem solving using math, measuring amounts of stuff that reacted with each other. It required people to think and not just memorize. But now I'm at the lowest level, which is memory, just memorizing, and I'm really I'm wondering if I was effective as a chemistry teacher.
I think you were, but. You made it fun. That's what I remember.
Right. Yeah.
But it also doesn't really apply to my life. So it's
because all the chemicals we had in the lab all caused cancer in those days, but they've removed them completely. I've
got a Mercury story for you. So what is it? Start with an M?
Mercury, no.
Mercury doesn't start with an M.
No.
Is it a C?
No.
It's an R.
No. It comes from the Latin word thing, hydrogyrum. HG. HG, you know. Water.
You're going to have to start with like helium, oxygen next time.
Okay, I will. Okay.
Right.
One more.
See if I do it. You got one more?
One more.
All right, well, what is it? I'll close the laptop.
Okay. Silver.
It's an L? Why am I getting an L?
No. It comes from the Latin word argentum or argentum.
It starts with an A, right?
AG, yeah.
Yeah, it's AG.
AG.
Is it AG?
But the thing is, these were all, the elements that were that occurred naturally in nature. They occurred naturally in nature. They weren't, some elements are only in combined form, like sodium. You don't have metallic sodium. Remember, we put that in water; it fizzles around and explodes. So all these elements, the ancients knew about, and you can find gold. Probably up in Jackman in some of the streams, and it's not an uncombined form. And then with the other copper, there are copper crystals that you see in mines out in Utah and so on. So they knew of all these elements, but they didn't speak English, so they spoke Latin.
So I've got a Mercury story for you.
Yeah.
We were in class, and I was the last class that you taught before you retired.
Right.
So I got you at you. You were already a pretty intense teacher. Like you had a lot of fun activities that you would have the students do. You had an egg gun,
Yeah.
right? You you had a lot of
What
fun.
they call it was, egg. Yeah, like a potato gun,
Yeah.
egg gun. We had an egg gun. Yeah.
But there's one I remember. You walked into class. We're all sitting there, and then you went, "Everybody," and you kind of walked into the back closet, and you're talking, and you pull out this empty canister, and you said, "Usually I used to do this experiment with mercury, but the government took it.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to use it anymore."
Right.
And then he took someone's chair and sat up and opened a ceiling tile, and you pull out another canister of mercury, and you said, "But I took it back." And then we proceeded to do
I don't
the
even remember
experiment.
that.
I remember that.
Okay. We try to keep some of it. I mean, it made chemistry exciting.
Yeah.
Years ago, we had lots of explosions going on in class and things going on that basically were producing, unknown to us. They were cancerous.
They're
and so on.
carcinogens.
Carcinogenic, yeah. But
How we're all alive, I don't know.
But the chemistry teachers today, I think it was fun being a chemistry teacher in those days. Today, I'm not sure it is.
I hope some people share their best Trotsky stories in the comment section.
Right.
So, as for your teaching career, like I said, I think you've touched a lot of lives. There's a lot of lessons that I think you taught me, even though I was your last class. For example, moderation. Everything is okay in moderation. Accepting of all other cultures. Like these are life lessons that every adult should learn and understand. And I don't think a lot of people in other schools, let alone the world, would consider their chemistry teacher to be the one that's teaching them these life lessons.
Yeah.
So what was your philosophy when you taught your students? Because you taught more than just the material.
Well, I think one of the things in public education is you're under the gun or observation from many different groups out there, and therefore the best thing to do is to avoid anything controversial when you're in class, because you might offend somebody. But the thing is, most of what and my grandfather taught me certain things. He said, if you want to get along in life, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion, you don't talk about sex or something like that. But I mean, these are the most interesting things to talk about. So I figured, if the job paid me like a congressman $200,000 a year, I would have been dull just to keep the job. But the job didn't pay a lot of money, and I enjoyed it, and I liked the kids, and I like ideas. So I decided, I'm going to talk. Let's talk. Let's get some ideas out. How do you feel about certain things? And of course, with alcohol, I remember the senior classes all used to go. I wasn't there because I wouldn't dare be there as a teacher. But they used to go to the local gravel pit, and they'd get stone drunk, and the kids would ask me. They'd say, "Mr. Trotsky, have you ever been an alcohol stoned?" No, what is it? There's a difference with drugs and with alcohol.
Drunk. There's a lot of variations.
Yeah,
but for drugs, it tends to be stoned.
Stoned, but for alcohol,
wasted.
Wasted.
Is
yeah.
that the one?
So I said, "Mr. Trotsky, you ever been wasted? You have been drunk in your life?" And I've never been drunk. I always wanted.
Really?
Never.
Fascinating. I'm fascinated.
I've always wanted to be in control of myself. The most drunk I've ever been was I'm Jewish. We celebrate Passover. And Passover during the Seder, which is Christ's Last Supper, the Seder, the liberation from Egypt it symbolizes. And during the Seder, everybody used to drink 4 cups of wine. Now, of course, your father's cup was about this size. It was silver. But the children's cups were small. But by the time the Seder was over, you were as close to wasted as a child as you could be. So alcohol wasn't something forbidden. It was part of life, part of our religion. And I'm sure in Catholicism, it's also part of the wafer, what is it?
The Eucharist.
The Eucharist is part of the Eucharist.
Body of the Christ, the blood of Christ.
So we grew up with alcohol not being forbidden, but the kids weren't allowed to drink, and maybe some of them never drank at home. I don't know. Their parents, I'm sure, did. But so this was a forbidden thing. So to them, it was really great to go get wasted. And I, I said to them, I know if you had too much to drink, you have what's the next thing in the morning? A hangover. So I said, what do I want to have a hangover? What do I want to get wasted for? I said to them, I want to tell you something. I said, this was sort of a lesson I wanted to give them. I said, but I do it in a way that, in a shocking way. I said, I want you to know, and I looked at the kids and I said, I love alcohol. Right to the kids, I love it. I said, I go home to Caratunk. I've got a wood fire there. It's way down. It's cold when I get there. I put a little brandy in a cup, a small paper cup. I put a little brandy in. I take some cheese, put it on some crackers, and I sit there in my coat in winter, eating it while I've built up the fire until it gets warm enough. So I'm watching Dan Rather, which dates me, Dan Rather in the evening news, while I'm having a little alcohol, sipping it, and having some cheese and crackers. And I said, and I love the sweet drinks and so on. But I said, and I said, but my brother, he was in high school, in college, he drank a lot of beer. He became an alcoholic. And afterward, he got onto marijuana and, for all I know, cocaine. But he was 4 years younger than me, and cultures had changed over that time. Mm-hmm. In other words, I'm now 79 going on 80, and I don't remember marijuana or any of these, cocaine or any of these drugs when I grew up. But we knew about alcohol. Mm-hmm. And some kids would have beer once in a while if they were in high school, but that's all I remember. And but I said, my brother got into all of that, became an alcoholic. The result is he couldn't even touch alcohol, and he doesn't touch it at all. And I feel sorry for him because alcohol is wonderful if you use it in moderation. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. My father used to come home at night and he always would take a little shot glass and have a shot of Hennessy cognac. And
you got the Hennessy over there?
Hennessy, this is in New York.
Yeah.
I come from New York City. He always had a shot of Hennessy cognac, and it somehow relaxed him. And when he had a heart attack, my mother asked, should he be should she cut that out? And the doctor said, the cardiologist said, probably it's good for him. So in other words, alcohol is okay in moderation, but it's not okay when it's abused.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be a self-medicating.
Yeah, but not just self-medicating, but for kids to say, I want to get wasted. Here they've graduated college, high school. They're in a gravel pit. I think there was some parental supervision. I had a better feeling.
They might have lied to you.
Parents, I think, may have been bringing them alcohol. I don't know, or watching them. But the thing is, I couldn't be there. And I thought as a senior class president, I should be there watching those kids that they don't jump into the fire or get hurt. I felt a responsibility, but I was told very clearly, you can't do that because it's illegal. And if you're at that graduation where they're drinking, you're going to be hung. But I all I could do was tell the kids, that certain things in moderation. Probably heroin is no good for you, and this new drug. I don't know anything about the drugs today. Fentanyl or something, the opioids.
Fentanyl is in drugs, but it's not supposed to be.
Yeah, but so there's certain things you shouldn't be taking. Yeah. But alcohol we've taken from time immemorial. But if you use it with what's the word? Not discretion. What's the word? Moderation. It's probably not so bad. It's relaxing to come home and have a small drink.
Yeah.
But and now the question became, what do you do about marijuana? Now, I have to say to you, I can't smoke because I was a competitive swimmer in high school and in college, so we never smoked. And when I did try a cigarette, I coughed like crazy. But then came marijuana, and I had a student once, I can't mention him because I don't want to cause any problems, in Jackman. He's a very successful person today, happily married, successful and everything. But he was helping me in Caratunk pick up some big trees down in Gorham, Maine to plant on the front lawn, 3 big maples. And that evening he stayed over because we hadn't finished it. And I said to him, what's the story on drugs in Jackman? Now, this goes back over 20 years ago. It could be 25 years ago. And he said, well, I'll tell you, but I don't want you to mention it to anybody. Well, so I'm not going to mention names. So he said, give me names. So I started reeling off names of top-notch students, the most respected students in the school in terms of, the council and everything. Every one of them had tried marijuana, and only one kid, his father had disapproved of it, so he was into beer. So the thing is, I realized what's going on, but there were kids who were on marijuana, from a few, who they'd come to school stoned or whatever it is, and he told me the way you can tell, this is how naive I am about this, but I said, how do you know if a kid's on marijuana? He said, you look at their eyeballs and their
dilated.
Pupils are dilated. So I knew there were kids anyway, because kids would tell me everything because they trusted me. And they were on marijuana from the morning they got to school. Before they got to school, they were on marijuana. So I decided one day that, I got to address this issue. It's not my issue in chemistry, but it's my issue as in loco parentis and in place of parents, which I am. And if I care about these kids, you may get in trouble, but you better speak about it. And so I basically, at class, I remember I looked at the kids and I said, after, you can only take so much chemistry. You can go with stoichiometry, you can go so far, and then everybody's mind starts, you need a break. So I said, I'd like to discuss with you marijuana. I said, first thing, on the record, it's illegal and you shouldn't be touching it. Is that clear?
This is 25 years ago?
This is more than, at least. But it's on the record, it's illegal. Now, off the record, I know many of you are smoking marijuana. And I said, I can't tell you much about marijuana because I don't know about it and I haven't smoked it because I can't inhale. I love the smell of it when I'm guiding. I'm guiding and I'm making...
I don't smoke either, but something about the smell of it has really started to affect me. Like, I smell it, and I used to hate it. Yeah. And it's grown on me, just the smell.
Yeah, the smell is nice. And so my first exposure to it was my wife and I went to the Bangor, it was called the Bangor Auditorium then, not the Cross Insurance Center is new.
It was torn down in 2013, 2014.
And we went there to see the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. And we got there, and you were sitting in the on the floor was chairs, and we were sitting on the sides with the kids in basketball, when they go to basketball tournaments. And I detected a really nice smell. So I looked at my wife, and I said, her name was Evelyn, so Evie was her nickname. So I said, Evie, it's a nice smell in here. They must be burning incense on the stage. I swear this is the truth. So she looked at me and said, Howard, it's not incense. Everybody around you, if you look, is smoking marijuana. So anyway, so that's how I got the first whiff of what I smelled. And then when I was a guide, taking overnights out in Indian Pond, doing the raft trips, you'd be cooking, dinner, and you'd get that nice smell that would come up, and you knew it was marijuana, and you look around, where's it coming from? And there you'd see two mothers with two kids who were probably seniors in high school on a raft trip, and the mothers and the kids were smoking marijuana. So the smell was okay, but I said to the kids, I said, I can't tell you if it's good or bad. You could look at alcohol and say, it's evil, it's bad, it kills brain cells and all that. No one should be drinking alcohol. But, we tried prohibition to get rid of alcohol, but it didn't work because people enjoyed it. Mm. And I say, for those of you who smoke, I'm sure if some teacher says to you, some older teacher, you shouldn't be smoking it, it's not going to make a bit of a difference because you're enjoying it. Yeah. What I realize now in retrospect is the parents of these kids were younger than I was, and they grew up in the marijuana generation. So probably many of the parents were smoking it, and who knows where they were getting it. So I said to them, I'm not going to say to you it's because I don't know. If you smoke a joint once in a while, have a few puffs on it, whether it's bad for you or not, I don't know that. But I said when you're smoking it continuously, you come to school on it. I said it may be having an effect on you, and therefore you should find out. But you got to go to the internet. The problem on the internet is that there are all different sources, but you have to go to reputable sources, the New England Journal of Medicine. Look in certain sources, find out what are the reputable ones to find out what studies have been done, what effects marijuana have on you.
Yeah, and that can be said about just about anything, doing the research to figure out what the actual effects are. But you need good
research.
Yeah.
But I said to them, my guess is probably if you have a smoke once in a while, it probably is not going to, hurt you. That's an uneducated guess. But I know one thing: if you're on it all the time, is something wrong. It's not good for you. A parent could hold me, go to the superintendent and say, he's talking about the kids saying that, it's okay to smoke marijuana. But I wasn't saying that. I knew they were smoking it, and I knew they were getting enjoyment out of it. So the question was, how do you at least stop kids from a continuous, using it from morning to night every day, 24 hours a day? But of course, I think today, when you look at today's world, marijuana is becoming legal, and
it's definitely become widely accepted.
And you drive down to, when I go from Bangor to Bingham, as soon as I come down the hill to Bingham,
I know the hill you're talking about.
There's this thing that sort of indicates medical marijuana. And I mean, think about where we've come, and society's changes. But the key thing is moderation is important in everything. I mean, when it comes to eating food, I mean,
that's clearly my drug of choice.
Yeah, I love cookies. That's why it probably comes from drinking Manischewitz, being forced to drink 4 cups of Manischewitz wine, which is sweet as can be, growing up. I love sugary things. I love cookies. I love Oreos. And I could go through a whole box in one day. But the thing is, I know it's not good for you. So, but there are people at the extreme who say, I won't eat anything that has sugar in it. I've cut out all sugar from my diet. But I like sugar. Why can't I enjoy it? But the issue is, have 2 cookies, maybe 3. That's it. Don't go through 10 with your coffee in the morning or something like that. And as you get older, diseases start setting in. People who eat too much end up with diabetes or heart attacks and whatnot. Yeah. And so you start learning that, for example, like growing up Jewish in an Orthodox Jewish home, bacon, pork chops was forbidden. And I never had them until I went to college and I was away from my parents. And then I was at Columbia College. I was at the dining room, and of course, you had eggs there, and you had fried potatoes, whatever hash brown potatoes, and you had sausage and bacon and all that. And I remember, I was looking at the bacon, and I hadn't had anything that.
You're 19 years old. You've never had bacon.
Never had it because it was forbidden.
Yeah.
And it's also
a gift from God, right there.
And it's also forbidden.
I wish I could try bacon for the first time again.
It's also forbidden for Muslims. Also, interesting enough. So I turned and I looked both ways on the line. I didn't see any Jewish kids. So I figured. I said 2 slices of bacon, and it was really good. If it's been forbidden for you till you're 19, it is really good. So, but then
it's like being told I can't have Skittles until I'm 19.
But then I went on a ham, bacon, sausage diet. Every day I was ordering one of the others. But then after a while, the forbidden thing started wearing off a little bit. It was food. So in Jackman, I'd come over, I'd be heading for the teacher's room through the commons, and they were cooking bacon. And Mrs. Trahan knew that I really loved it. So she would always say, come here, Howard, I've got a present for you. And she'd give me 3 pieces of of forbidden bacon to this Jewish guy and so on. But later on, I had a heart attack. And when I was 67, I was teaching in Jackman. I was 67 years old. It was a summer. And I was in good shape. I had low cholesterol. I ate well. I had low cholesterol, low blood pressure. And I ended up with a heart attack. And I had a completely blocked right coronary artery. If it had been the left one, I probably would have been gone. And I ended up driving, it was summer, to the hospital. And I met Dr. La Rochelle from Jackman. He's in the emergency room, so it was nice seeing somebody I knew. And in the end, they put a stent in, and the doctor told me downstairs, he said to me, he said, I want to tell you something. This is in the intensive care, recuperating. He said, you have a heart attack because you've inherited this cardiac disease from your father. My father had a heart attack when he was 53 years old, and he suffered the rest of his life. He lasted until 67, but he was continuously on nitroglycerin and all that. But he never exercised. He didn't exercise under intense pressure all the time in business. But for me, I couldn't believe it. My political views were liberal like my mother and not like my father's views. And my father, when I grew up, always used to take the strap to me when I caused problems. And I thought to myself, what do you mean it's cardiac disease? It's inherited cardiac disease. You've inherited it from your father.
This guy gave you nothing good, huh?
And I looked like I looked like my mother. I had many of her political views and all that. But I couldn't help it. You inherited cardiac disease. Now you have to make a decision. The decision is I was never on lots of fatty meats, but I don't eat bacon anymore. I don't eat it because it's very fatty. And I don't, when it comes to chicken, if I roast a chicken, I cook myself. I'm single. When I roast a chicken, I take all the gravy afterward, put it in a jar, and then I put it in the refrigerator. And then the white fat at the top, I skim it all off and throw it away, because you have to live healthy. And so, but once in a while, I asked the doctor, what if I have a hot dog once in a while, a Frankfurt hot dog? He said, it's okay, as long as it's in moderation. If you're having hot dogs every evening for dinner, so the word moderation is important in terms of exercise. When you exercise, you don't have to run a marathon every day, but you should, at most ages, you should be at least walking. And to keep healthy.
You told me you were mowing the lawn yesterday.
Oh, I do a lot of,
with a push mower.
Oh yeah, I do a lot of work.
With a push mower.
I climb mountains. One of my favorite things is, and I do it each year, is to climb Sally Mountain in Kineo. So there's a way of doing everything, When you drive with moderation, not at 90 miles an hour. You drive at the speed limit. I often abuse that, but the thing is, it's moderation and everything. It's a key word, I think.
Well, excellent. I hate to be the guy that interrupts a podcast or a conversation, but I actually have a sponsorship this week, so check it out. Halloween is right around the corner, and who better to sponsor us than Bangor's own low-budget production company, Cemetery Theater, specializing in genre films from comedy to horror right in Bangor, Maine. Their newest short film, titled The Barrens, is the only Stephen King-inspired fan film to use actual locations that inspired the author to write the novel It. After the success of their first feature-length film, Sleep Eaters, creator Shane Grant and his team have hit the ground running, creating short horror projects, introducing Bangor's new horror host, Morty Sutter, and producing a comedic documentary about the evolving cannabis culture in Maine titled High Authority. Cemetery Theater will be in attendance at the Bangor Comic and Toy Con Halfway Convention on October 19th at the Eagles Club in Brewer, Maine, with special guest Morty Sutter, where they'll be talking about his first annual Halloween special debuting online for free October 30th. How did you but how did you interact and choose to treat the children who are considered maybe problem students? my entire class, for example, was pretty much considered problem students, and a lot of the classes above me had problem students where there was just no motivation. There was trying to drop out, getting ready to go to work. Maybe poor family situations, where where some people would give up on these kids and just let them do what they needed. I don't feel like you ever did.
No. In reference to this, I have to say something. Living in Caratunk in the summer, kids would stop by, and it was always the kids who gave me the most trouble. It was always the worst, as someone would say. The worst kids would always stop by. The kids who gave you trouble and made your life difficult as a teacher and made you wish you were the janitor some days. The thing is, and I never understood it. And my wife would say, "Who are these kids?" I says, "These are my students." And a lot of them were pretty rough. And someone explained to me, and I never realized this, the reason that these kids are stopping by your house is because even though things weren't relevant to them in school, they knew you cared about them. And I took a lot of abuse. I mean, one of the things, I was not a great disciplinarian. That was not my
That's why I passed chemistry.
Yeah, that was not my forte, being a great disciplinarian. But the thing is, I cared about kids, and I also realized, growing up in New York City and being in public school during the years of West Side Story, where there were gangs and all that, and kids would come from Puerto Rico, they couldn't speak English, they lived probably 6 to a room and 2 beds. I don't know what it was rough times then. You realize that certain kids have certain benefits. I mean, if your parents had gone to college and told you, and right off you knew from the beginning of you as a young child, they had expectations of you to go to college, but to go to graduate school, I think it was a lot easier than if when you came home, your father said to you, "How'd you do? How'd you do with your grade?" He said, "Well, I got a C minus," and he said, "Good," and that was it. If your parents had a higher education, this is a little stereotyping, so it's not always accurate for everybody. But the thing is, they'd give you hell if you came home. My daughter came home with a C in chemistry, and I looked and I said, "Well, you're grounded." And she was having a fit. I said, "You're staying in on weekends until you can pull that C up to a B." And I knew she could, though. And most kids, if they work, they can get at least a B if they really work hard. Certain kids can't get A's. It's very difficult for them. So everybody has certain limitations. There are certain kids who are gifted and so on, other kids who are gifted in other things, and other kids who have difficulty in different issues. So yeah, my biggest achievement, the thing I cared about, is that a kid who had a family that supported him educationally, I wasn't worried about that kid. That kid was going to make it somehow. But there were kids who came from very distressed families, and it was much harder for them. But if you could get one of those kids to go to the University of Maine or to Huston College or to get into Colby or a good school or a good vocational school, Eastern Maine, it was called Eastern Maine Vocational Technical, they became successful. And this was important to me. I felt for the kid who was suffering. And I had one kid whose parents owned a small store up there, and I remember she was always working at the store, and she was under constant pressure and having a lot of difficulty. And I did all I could to help her in every which way, and she finally did well, and at the end, and I didn't take the whole average. I took the good grades at the end and gave her a good grade based on what she was doing, because looking at the hardship that she was trying to overcome, and she ended up going to a nursing school and becoming very successful. And you saw that with most kids. All these kids succeeded. I mean, the one guy who gave me more trouble in school, because it was fun though, he's a truck driver. He drives a truck that can wipe out any car on the road if he's not responsible. And here I am walking around Caratunk hiking around Caratunk, because I walked the 2 miles around and go down the Appalachian Trail to the river as exercise. And I'm on Route 201, and cars are going 60 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, this truck, I'm walking north, and this truck from coming up from Skowhegan is coming up, and it stops, abruptly stops, and this truck starts backing up on the road. And there are cars, going by, and that truck is not swerving in the middle. It's going straight back along the side of the road. And I thought to myself, does a truck driver like Frank Patton ever stop for a doctor, a lawyer, a president of a university? He stopped for his high school teacher because he knew I cared about him.
Do you think that's the key? That's
you
why you were so
you have
respected?
to care, and you have to have patience. You have to have patience. And one thing I've noticed is that every kid becomes successful eventually, because school may not be relevant at the time, what they're learning, but eventually they find something is relevant to them. And when that happens, they click. And I see that in people I meet in Bangor. There's a kid, I'm standing there in Walmart, and a big guy with a beard says, "How are you, Mr. Trotsky?" in Bangor. And I look at the kid, and I know him from somewhere. And he tells me what his name is. And he was dumb. He was thrown out of school, But he works in construction now. He's married. He goes with a lovely gal and has 2 children and everything like that. So he found his thing. It suddenly became relevant, but school wasn't relevant at that time. And there has to be a readiness when people go to school or college or whatever. There has to be a readiness to and a meaning. And if there's meaning to it, they do well. In the same way that chemistry probably was not that meaningful to you, stoichiometry and all of that. It would have been important if you became a pharmacist or one of certain things, but
I was one of the few people that knew what I wanted to do for a living.
And you can see with what you're doing here that you love it, you're enthusiastic about it, you want to learn because it's relevant to your life and so on. I hated history when I took U.S. history back in long time ago. I had a teacher who sat there and he would call on each person and ask a question, and you'd be embarrassed if you didn't answer the question. What date did this occur? What war was this? And everything like that, testing or reading. I hated it, but I learned the structure of U.S. history. Now I love history. I love Maine history, and I have a huge collection of books on Maine history. I like history of what went on in the logging industry over time. History of ancient Israel, for example, I enjoy U.S. history, but it suddenly became relevant to me and meaningful to me. I'm not tested on it, but I read and read and read because I enjoy it.
You're a lifetime learner.
Exactly,
learner.
And that's what hopefully people become. The other thing with kids, which is important, especially in rural areas, is part of going on to school is to expand your horizons, your education. And many kids I remember in Jackman, if they were going on to a university, to higher education, they were afraid to leave Jackman because it was such a small school. There was an intimacy, community CAD. No one got lost. I don't think people got lost at Forest Hills High School. That everybody, there was somebody to help them to what's the expression? Their back, cover their back, or if something went wrong. But the whole idea was a kid would say, "I'm afraid of going to a big school. Here's the University of Maine at Orono. It's a wonderful school." But they thought, I'd be more comfortable if I go from Jackman all the way up to the University of Fort Kent because it's very small, or to Presque Isle or something like that. And I always would try to encourage them, it's not such a big city, Bangor and Orono. Go there. There's more opportunities in terms of education when you go there, and also social life and everything else. And so you dealt with that. And then you had kids, for example. There was one kid who, very bright, but it was difficult to family growing up. And this young person, I asked the person in April, I said, where are you going to college? What are you doing? And the answer was, I really don't know. And, here's April already, they're accepting people. Well, in this case, I looked and I knew her abilities and whatnot. She was very bright, but was not showing it because she was, for some reason, things weren't relevant. I immediately walked out of class, got on the phone, called Husson College, School of Nursing, and said, do you still accept applications for nursing school? This is not my job. This is a guidance counselor. But this kid wasn't slipping through the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Just through the cracks?
Through the cracks. This kid, it was my responsibility. And my chemistry room was right next to the office. I called Husson. They said, we'll still accept applications. So she got I gave the name of the kid. The kid got an application and filled it out. And within a week, she was accepted at Husson College Nursing. And today she's a nurse and doing very well and whatnot. So I felt, I was responsible for those kids. Wherever I could help out, I would help out.
You see that pretty often. Or you don't see that as often nowadays, where the faculty member, the teacher, the professor will put his neck out or her neck out to help somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, once the classroom door is shut and the bell rings, like they're not their responsibility anymore, and you see that more often.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's because the parents would get upset about it or we're treating our kids with kid gloves, I don't know. But it's like lately faculty members and professional teachers are being reprimanded for trying to care about their students. I've just seen it lately. I felt it lately.
The other thing which is interesting I learned, and it took me a while to learn this, that, every kid has to go by his own drummer. In other words, you can't say a kid should go directly to vocational school or directly to college. Maybe they need time to figure out what they want to do.
I'm a very big advocate for not rushing students to get into school.
Yeah.
A lot of them, especially this day and age, they have a lot of things to figure out before they go. I mean, You're not doing a kid any favors by sending him to school if he doesn't know what he wants to do. All you're doing is putting him in debt.
Yeah.
And I felt extremely rushed when I was in high school. Like there was a class that my grades depended on me writing a college essay and writing a college application and reference letters. And it's like, I wasn't even sure at that point in my senior year that I wanted to go to college yet.
Yeah. Well, that's why when I went to a liberal arts education, Columbia, you were required. It had 2 years of required courses. You had to read all the great writers of Western civilization. You had an art course you had to take. You had a music course you had to take. But it gave you time to explore. And when I first went there, my father wanted, what are you going to do to make a living? You're going into engineering. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be this. And I went through school learning, and eventually I decided what I want to be as a teacher. My parents were not happy because teachers in those days, my first job in Rumford made $4,950. And my father was not happy with me, but I enjoyed it. You only live once, and you have to follow your passion.
Just a matter of giving them that time to figure it out.
Giving them time to figure it out. My daughter lives in Israel, and in Israel, when a kid graduates high school, it's mandatory that they go into the armed forces. So the girls go in for 2 years, and the guys go in for 3 years. But it gives them a chance to face some tough, some difficult situations and mature.
Mm-hmm.
And then they end up finally going to finding out what they want. By the time they find out what they want, and even after they get out of the army, what the Israelis do is they travel. 3 of them will get together. They don't have very much money, so they go to South America or somewhere, or Africa, and they travel. And so they mature over that time. But in my experience myself, you were expected finish high school, go directly on to college, and then go to graduate school. That was expected of me. And the thing is, but during that time, there were some difficult times because I didn't want to do what my parents wanted me to do. And my parents were not happy with me when I told them, I'm leaving New York. I was 23, and I'm going to take a real job in Maine as a teacher in Rumford, Maine. and I was a failure to them, you know. My father's biggest mistake that he sent me at 10 years old to a summer camp in Maine, and I fell in love with lakes and streams and whatnot. And so
if you had
the other thing what's important as a teacher, you have to love your subject. You have to really be fascinated by your own subject. If you like history and also you like kids at that age. In other words, you have to like the kids at the age. To me, high school kids were exciting. You know, I don't think I would have been that happy as a junior high school or middle school, you know, but as the high school kids, I really enjoyed working with. They were difficult. Some were very difficult and some were hostile to you at times, but you had to sort of play rope-a-dope like Ollie. You know, when a kid was getting aggressive, you backed off a little way and let him speak and let him air his grievances and so on.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he was right. I mean, you come back at times and explain to him that you're not right on this, but the kids knew I liked them, and that's what was. I think that's why it was. And then at one point in time, I remember I had that I used to take the kids to the museum in Boston, the Science Museum. We had money. The school supported that, but one year we had hardly any money, so we couldn't do it. So I thought to myself, you know, I want to take some kids down there. I'm going to take the three worst. I don't mean bad kids. I mean, but the three kids who really were underprivileged, hadn't had exposure to things, and were trouble. They could be trouble for you, some of them. So I picked three kids, and I had an old Dodge Dart, and I laid out much of my own money for this, and I took these three kids down to Boston. Teachers were upset with me. They said, you don't take three kids who give you trouble to Boston. You reward kids who are doing well to take them to Boston. But I took them to Boston. I remember we walked the Freedom Trail. We went to the aquarium in Boston. I mean, I had three kids. I was looking for them, and I found them pounding on the glass to see how strong the glass was, and there were sharks on the other side, or spitting down from the second level down at the Penguins. And I mean, but it was an experience going to Boston with them. And I remember one night we were in a motel and they were in the swimming pool, and I went to the steam room, and I was telling this guy about what I had done. He said to me, I want to tell you something, Howard. He said, you may not see results immediately, but maybe something's going to reach these kids, and this trip's going to be influential 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 7 years down the road. And one of those, I know two of them have been done very well. And one of them has high expectations for his kids to achieve and so on. So you only live once. And so and I think most teachers care about their kids. I mean, they care about them. And many of them go overboard beyond what their job is to help kids out. But that's your, when I go back in life, I look at the fraternity I was in New York, at Columbia. My fraternity brothers were Bob Kraft, who now owns the Patriots. He's worth $5 billion.
You were in a frat with Robert Kraft?
Robert Kraft. He's worth $5 billion. Another guy, Jerry Spire, he now owns Rockefeller Center and the Empire State Building. And Howard Trotsky lives in a rundown house, lives in a small little one-story house in Bangor with a house that needs paint and falling apart and sinking into the ground in Caratunk. But if you ask me, did I have a good life? The answer is yes. I did the right thing. I followed my passion, and I think that's what kids have to do, follow their passions. And, I think that you only live life once. I mean, so I've enjoyed talking with you, and a lot of fun.
I appreciate that.
I hope I'm not boring. So.
I don't think you're boring at all.
Okay.
I think this is exactly what the people at home want to hear. We only have one question left to figure out, and that's whether or not that one alcoholic beverage made me better at the periodic table. You forget we were doing this?
But you're like me. You're a total failure. You didn't have any.
I just need to get one, and I'm better than I was.
You need to get one. But then
I
again,
can't look at study.
but then again, I got to say why you didn't get these is because it's been a long time. You do remember it back in because you did pass that test. And I know that.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe the alcohol made some of these come
Maybe
out.
maybe it made it come back.
Okay,
You must appreciate as a someone who's interested in science. This must have some kind of
Okay,
interest to you.
potassium.
Oh, is that Ka? K. Sort of a K, right?
K. It's K.
It's just K.
K. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that one. Yeah,
And that comes from kalium, which
I have to eat a lot of bananas, so I'm just very aware of that one.
right.
Hey, I'm already better. I'm just gonna say that.
Sodium.
That's Na.
That's right. Everybody's sodium.
You're giving me easy ones now. That's not
I've
cool.
given you the tough ones already. I can't think what.
Oh, now he's digging. He's gonna pull out like zillium or.
No, I can't. I can't. Well, there are elements that weigh in the end, which are hard. But
I'm really trying not to cheat.
platinum.
Platinum. That just. It's not just gonna be PT.
That's right.
Oh, hey, I'm 3 for 3
You're better. You're better. With all this alcohol, it's amazing you're still standing.
with all of this. I get it's like an ounce.
It's you're still standing. The rest you are easy to do.
Yeah.
Nitrogen,
I mean, it's N.
right? Oxygen,
It's O.
carbon,
C.
carbon,
Ca. Co.
calcium.
Is that Ca?
Yeah. What's carbon?
Is it C? It's not Cb. It's
Just C.
it's just C.
C.
Yeah.
Right. You're okay. You're okay.
Well, because most of them are easy. 90% of them have their first letter.
That's the ones I gave you were the ones to test your memory. But you know those. They're there.
I did better the second time.
No, but because I used to go when I went from Jackman to rafting, Northern Outdoors, I had to review the names of all the guides that I had worked with because I forgot them all. They weren't right on the edge of my tongue. And at the end of the year, I knew all at the end of the summer, I knew all the guides' names. There were hundreds of people worked at Northern Outdoors, and I had to go back and teach. And I couldn't remember the names of the teachers. I knew their faces. And when I meet a lot of people today, you know the face, and you say, just wait. It'll take me a while to get the name. Just let me think. I start relating. What did they do? What did they do? And finally, the name pops up from inside.
When we met, it had been 5 years, and I saw you in Bagel Central in downtown Bangor.
That's right.
And I came up to you and I said, "Hey, are you Howard Trotsky? Like I didn't know you lived in Bangor."
Yeah.
And you gave me that whole, who are you?
Who are you?
Don't tell me. I know who you are.
Yeah, I had to figure it out.
Yeah, but you got it. You said, "Are you a Levesque?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And then you asked which one. But you
Yeah.
knew. But you knew.
And I'm still
roughly.
confused because I don't remember. I know both you guys, your brother and you, but I don't distinctly remember either of you in relation to what class.
Yeah, probably because we were pretty forgettable. We didn't do much. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for him, but I really kept my head down. I didn't really goof around. I was a freshman, so I
you were
wasn't.
quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, I was still quiet. I hadn't honed my
Were you
personality
in
yet.
Barrett Holden's class at all?
Oh my God, no! He was several years
behind you.
No, he was several years ahead
of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, remember that on top of being available for your viewing pleasure on YouTube, you can also find the podcast available on iTunes and Spotify. And add the Boondock Perspective on Facebook and Instagram for sneak peeks and highlights. And I really want to thank Howard Trotsky for coming on. Please like, share, and subscribe because this is definitely an episode that I think a lot more people are going to want to watch. Till next time, thank you. You want to say goodbye to the people?
I'm looking at a camera, not people.
I should start drawing smiley faces on the lenses.
You have to.
Yeah.
To. Well, I enjoyed this interview and have a lot of good memories of Jackman and people up there and the beautiful environment that all of you live in up there. And keep winning the tournaments because that's where I get to meet everybody when they come to Bangor at the Cross Insurance Center.